I like storytelling, but I need to change gears now. And I'm going to tell you about somebody who was a real outlaw, unlike the hobo outlaws I've been discussing, and so on. And I've got a couple of Texas subscribers, maybe even three, four, and I've got some Canadian, United Kingdom subscribers that might enjoy listening to a true Texas tale from an original Texan. Please don't forget that I descend from the Little Ten, the first Anglo colony in Texas, on both my mother and father's side. So here goes. Steve McQUEEN made his screen debut on television in the Wells Fargo Hour. It's like Wells Fargo Tales of the West or whatever, with Dale Robertson, Steve McQUEEN. Steve McQUEEN played my cousin, the outlaw, alleged outlaw, Wild Bill Longley. And this is the true story, not the history written by the drunk carpetbaggers. Please, if you know nothing about the carpetbaggers, were a menace upon Texas and the South in general, but especially Texas. They saw it as ripe for pickings. They got involved in real estate speculation. They started burning. I'll tell you more later. But Steve McQUEEN starred. Look it up. You can find it on the Wells Fargo's Tales of the West or whatever and stuff. And actually, I'm quite sure I think, accuse him of having robbed a Wells Fargo train, which up in North Texas, which I think is pure Hollywood. Number one, it's a pretty long ride to get up there and get back. He mostly operated to the east of here. He was born in Washington County, and I don't think he was a fancy dresser like Steve McQUEEN was in that 1 hour presentation with the famous Dale Robertson, because he actually wore like one of those silk bow ties with the long string that come, two long strings that come down with it, and a very well, perfectly tailored suit for a horseback rider, where the split in the back goes all the way up to almost the middle of your back, so that it doesn't get creased on the saddle. And the story shows Wild Bill Longley working in cooperation with the famous Wells Fargo agent played by Dale Robertson. Look it up. It's there. It's available for free on YouTube. It's not really true, but what the hell? I may venture off at the end of this. I can see it coming in the back of my mind to tack on at least some commentary about carpetbaggers. I actually am about to launch into it now. Wild Bill Longley was hung in Giddings, Texas by a carpetbagging judge and a carpetbagging jury who hung him for murder. It wasn't really murder. It was justice. Because see, they're the only people I don't believe some drunk who got it, fourth, fifth, sixth hand and some sitting on some bar stool somewhere. I believe the 70, 80, 90-year-old men that I heard it from, who are now deceased, who were closest to the people that actually knew him. But following the Civil War, we were inundated with the scum of the North. The North didn't want them either. They were more than glad to and they made their traveling bags out of pieces of carpet. That's why they were called carpet baggers. Pretty durable. And so actually, Wild Bill Longley, one of the things that made me think of this is, as my parents, I know I'm going on a tangent again, I'll come back. As a kid, I remember my mom and dad, because my dad wanted to see the grave of Sam Bass. Look up Sam Bass. I'm pretty sure Sam Bass and Wild Bill knew each other. But Wild Bill was, he was, I think he's a hell of a man. He was known actually as the defender of Confederate widows. The carpetbaggers constantly preyed upon, robbed, land scheme, would buy their land, say, well, here's a $10 down payment and I'll pay you the other 50 tomorrow for your 100 acres or something, and get them to sign that's the kind of scamming we had. And then as soon as they got like the $10, they would go ahead and just, once they had drinking money, they'd go ahead and rape the women right there on the spot because they're all alone. We had a lot of isolated small communities, a lot of isolated farmers and stuff. Texas is a big place. And back in them days, your horse's shoe prints were as good as fingerprints. Wild Bill Longley could be absolutely sure that once he picked up your trail at the house of the injured or raped or murdered party, he would then track them day and night. And as I understand is once he made sure that he had the right party, he'd calmly wait until they were all snoozing, and at the first light where he could be sure he was shooting, because he wasn't going to shoot no women or kids, but any armed male adult or any. And those cabins used to be pretty small. He'd bust in at first light and just cap the rapist and anybody giving them shelter, any male giving them shelter. So the stories you hear about Wild Bill Longley are a bunch of crap made up by carpetbaggers in Hollywood. I'm quite sure he never robbed a stagecoach. Were there actually, I did a little research. There weren't any. Why would they even go through the panhandle, the northern part of the panhandle of Texas? There were some places to get to in New Mexico, but it just didn't make any sense. But I want to remind you, Steve McQUEEN made his debut playing my outlaw cousin that's related to me on my mother's side. I believe that's actually the Alcorn and Maddox. I never give out my mother's maiden name. In fact, I ain't stupid. And the winds are picking up. It was hot a little while ago, and now we got a steady 25-mile-an-hour breeze, and 73 degrees feels chilly due to the wind chill. That's the real story of Wild Bill Longley, and I bet you my cousin Chris Longley will probably find this video too and probably subscribe. He's subscribed to my first channel, and I think that we communicated a bit. But to you Texans who haven't been, or newer Texans, people are trying to adopt, try to adopt this state as your home. Please bear in mind, we haven't been that fond of outsiders since the end of the Civil War, because the scum that came on here, I've got to tell the orphan train story as part of this. I actually met some of the children, or some of the very last survivors of the orphan trains. The city of New York sent 250,000 orphans, a lot of them the children of New York City prostitutes. Right after the war, they loaded them onto railroad trains, probably cattle cars, and shipped them south as free labor for Southerners. Y'all didn't know that, did you? That New York City is so kind-hearted and big-hearted and stuff. They're so, you can't be, it's illegal to be homeless in New York City, and you've got to be sheltered and all this stuff. But They took 250,000 children. So actually, by the time they got to my part of Texas, the original heart of Texas, those children have been pretty well picked over for size and strength and stuff. But I remember one old lady, she damn near hit 100. I remember her dying, and she was one of the last of the orphan train survivors. She must have been a baby when she got here. But when the carpetbaggers arrived here, they were notoriously felonious. That's why I'm talking about Wild Bill Longley. This is a follow-up to at age 15, he went to hunting, carpetbagging, rapist carpetbagging, no good pieces of shit. And he had just capped their ass. We don't really know what his body count is. He wasn't the type to leave notches on his gun. He wasn't no fruitcake piece of, you know? I had to look over to make sure I'm not offending anybody. You know, he wasn't a braggart. I doubt he dressed all kind of sissified like Steve McQUEEN was in the Wells Fargo presentation. And he hunted grown, armed men from age 15 to, I think they hanged him at age 25 or 27, something like that. And he was a badass. You know, he had no trouble if he is 100% certain. Because in those days, like I said, your horseshoes, tracks, every horseshoes are unique. They get little marks in them and stuff like that. The way their frogs are shaped and the hooves, all that kind of. I'm a trained tracker myself. I've read the old PhD historian papers. They were handwritten, and then eventually typed up by hand, and they are kept only in the reference rooms at libraries. I've read them. They were the only accurate accounts of what happened post-bellum, after the war. And to know all about supporting, I knew all about the prowlers. I know all about that stuff. And as the felonies would mount up against the carpetbaggers, they would burn our courthouses. That's why all the way from like Fredericksburg and Kerrville, all the way to East Texas, we had to go to stone, masonry, and metal roofs after the carpetbaggers. You know, we Texans are a friendly, gregarious people with a lot of what the Germans call Gemütlichkeit. We're a pretty laid-back people. But we don't forget how we have been abused and occupied in the past and how they took over our educational system and our government. We were an occupied state for a long time. They did a lot of damage, and my cousin, Wild Bill Longley, did his best to set some of them straight. Did set them straight permanently. So if you look up Wikipedia or something, just the same way as when I looked up Elmer Wayne Henley, I've had Elmer Wayne Henley in my custody to interview. He actually was probably the brains behind the whole, nailing little boys to 4x8 sheets of plywood and butt raping them and stuff like that, and then killed his partner in crime, which he claimed coerced him into it. Oh God, they kidnapped, tortured, raped, and murdered 60 little boys, which they buried right ahead of the 610 freeway as it was being laid around Houston. There was no way we could dig up all the bodies. And he was the most harmless looking little sissy, like a lot of them carpetbaggers. So, in this state, if a native Texan calls you a carpetbagger, he's letting you know that he don't like you. If you knew the history, especially, there's almost no real estate property deeds prior to 1890 that are actually, they're all past 1890 or so. They're all reconstructions, mostly from memory. A lot of them are inaccurate. I can challenge in my area, I can challenge a lot of property deeds because they were not legal and they were destroyed by fire. So I'm going to conclude here at 15 minutes. That's really, in brief, a true Texas tale from a true Texan, an original Texan, about his cousin, Wild Bill Longley, who was first portrayed by Steve McQUEEN. There you go.